Tupi language. Upright equals 1.81 Thumb Father José de Anchieta 1534-1597, the first grammarian of Tupi, is envisioned by Antônio Parreiras. Old Tupi or classical Tupi, also spelled as Tupi, is an extinct Tupian language which was spoken by the aboriginal Tupi people of Brazil, mostly those who inhabited coastal regions in south and southeast Brazil. It belongs to the Tupi-Guarani language family and has a written history spanning the 16th, 17th, and early 18th centuries. In the early colonial period, Tupi was used as a lingua franca throughout Brazil by Europeans and Aboriginal Americans and had literary usage, but it was later suppressed almost to extinction. Today, only one modern descendant is living with an appreciable number of speakers in Nheengatu. The names Old Tupi or Classical Tupi are used for the language in English, and by modern scholars it is referred to as in Portuguese, but native speakers called it variously the Good Language, Common Language, Human Language, in Old Tupi, or in Portuguese, General Language, Amazonian General Language, Brazilian Language. History. Old Tupi was first spoken by the Tupinambá people, who lived under cultural and social conditions very unlike those found in Europe. It is quite different from Indo-European languages in phonology, morphology, and grammar, but it was adopted by many Luso-Brazilians born in Brazil as a lingua franca known as lingua geral. It belonged to the Tupi-Guarani language family, which stood out among other South American languages for the vast territory it covered. Until the 16th century, these languages were found throughout nearly the entirety of the Brazilian coast, from Pará to Santa Catarina, and the River Plate basin. Today, Tupi languages are still heard in Brazil states of Maranhão, Pará, Amapá, Amazonas, Mato Grosso do Sul, Goiás, São Paulo, Paraná, Santa Catarina, Rio Grande do Sul, Rio de Janeiro, and Espírito Santo, as well as in French Guiana, Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, Paraguay, and Argentina. It is a common mistake to speak of the Tupi-Guarani language. Tupi, Guarani, and a number of other minor or major languages all belong to the Tupian language family, in the same sense that English, Romanian, and Sanskrit belong to the Indo-European language family. One of the main differences between the two languages was the replacement of Tupi by the glottal fricative in Guarani. The first accounts of the Old Tupi language date back from the early 16th century, but the first written documents containing actual information about it were produced from 1575 onwards, when Jesuits André Thavet and José de Anchieta began to translate Catholic prose and biblical stories into the language. Another foreigner, Jean de Lury, wrote the first and possibly only Tupi phrasebook, in which he transcribed entire dialogues. Lury's work is the best available record of how Tupi was actually spoken. In the first 2 or 3 centuries of Brazilian history, nearly all colonists coming to Brazil would learn the Tupinambá variant of Tupi as a means of communication with both the indigenous people and with other early colonists who had adopted the language. The Jesuits, however, not only learned to speak Tupinambá, but also encouraged the Indians to keep it. As a part of their missionary work, they translated some literature into it and also produced some original work written directly in Tupi. José de Anchieta reportedly wrote more than 4,000 lines of poetry in Tupinambá, which he called Lingua Brasilica and the first Tupi grammar. Lewis Figueira was another important figure of this time, who wrote the second Tupi grammar, published in 1621. In the second half of the 18th century, the works of Anchieta and Figueira were republished, and Father Bettendorf wrote a new and more complete catechism. By that time, the language had made its way into the clergy and was the de facto national language of Brazil, though it was probably seldom written, as the Roman Catholic Church held a monopoly of literacy. When the Portuguese Prime Minister Marquis of Pombal expelled the Jesuits from Brazil in 1759, the language started to wane fast, as few Brazilians were literate in it. Besides, a new rush of Portuguese immigration had been taking place since the early 18th century due to the discovery of gold, diamonds, and gems in the interior of Brazil. These new colonists spoke only their mother tongue. Old Tupi survived as a spoken language used by Europeans and Indian populations alike only in isolated inland areas, far from the major urban centers. Its use by a few non-Indian speakers in those isolated areas would last for over a century still. Tupi research. When the Portuguese first arrived on the shores of modern-day Brazil, most of the tribes they encountered spoke very closely related dialects. The Portuguese, and particularly the Jesuit priests who accompanied them, set out to proselytize the natives. To do so most effectively, doing so in the natives' own languages was convenient, so the first Europeans to study Tupi were those priests. The priests modeled their analysis of the new language after the one with which they had already experienced, Latin, which they had studied in the seminary. In fact, the first grammar of Tupi written by the Jesuit priest José de Anchieta in 1595 is structured much like a contemporary Latin grammar. While this structure is not optimal, it certainly served its purpose of allowing its intended readership, Catholic priests familiar with Latin grammars, to get enough of a basic grasp of the language to be able to communicate with and evangelize the natives. Also, the grammar sometimes regularized or glossed over some regional differences in the expectation that the student, once in a field, would learn these finer points of the particular dialect through use with his flock. Significant works were a Jesuit Catechism of 1618, with the second edition of 1686, another grammar written in 1687 by another Jesuit priest, Luis Figuera, an anonymous dictionary of 1795 again published by the Jesuits, a dictionary published by Antonio Gonçalves Dias, a well-known 19th-century Brazilian poet and scholar, in 1858, and a Christomathy published by Dr. Ernesto Ferrer France in 1859. Considering the breadth of its use both in time and space, this language is particularly poorly documented in writing, particularly the dialect of Sao Paulo spoken in the south. Phonology. The phonology of Tupinambá has some interesting and unusual features. For instance, it does not have the lateral approximant or the multiple vibrant rhotic consonant. It also has a rather small inventory of consonants and a large number of pure vowels, 12. This led to a Brazilian pun about this language that Indians now term fé nem lei, nem rei, have neither faith, nor law, nor king, as the words fé, lei, law, and rei king could not be pronounced by a native Tupi speaker. They would say pé, rei, and rei. It is also a double pun because Brazil has not had a king for more than 2 centuries. Vowels. The nasal vowels are fully vocalic without any trace of a trailing R. They are pronounced with the mouth open and the palate relaxed, not blocking the air from resounding through the nostrils. These approximations, however, must be taken with caution, as no actual recording exists, and Tupi had at least 7 known dialects. Alternative view. According to Nathaniel Santos Gomes, however, the phonetic inventory of Tupi was simpler consonants. PTK, D, S6, M, N tilde. U circumflex, A circumflex. R vowels. I, Y, U, I tilde, letter 1 EF9, U tilde. E, O tilde, letter 1 EBD. A tilde. The scheme does not regard Y circumflex as a separate semivowel, does not consider the existence of GE, and does not differentiate between the 2 types of NG, and probably because it does not regard MB, ND, and NG as independent phonemes, but mere combinations of P, T, and Kelvin with nasalization. Santos Gomes also remarks that the stop consonant shifted easily to nasal stops, which is attested by the fitful spelling of words like umbu, umu, ubru, umbu, upu, umpu in the works of the early missionaries and by the surviving dialects. According to most sources, Tupi semivowels were more consonantal than their IPA counterparts. The I circumflex, for instance, was rather fricative, thus resembling a very slight, and U circumflex had a distinct similarity with the voice stop, possibly via, which would likewise be a fricative counterpart of the labiova semivowel, thus being sometimes written gu. As a consequence of that character, Tupi loanwords in Brazilian Portuguese often have J for I circumflex and gu for U circumflex. Writing system. It would have been almost impossible to reconstruct the phonology of Tupi if it did not have a wide geographic distribution. The surviving Amazonian Nheengatu and the close Guarani correlates Maya, Nhandeva, Kiowa, and Paraguayan Guarani provide material that linguistic research can still use for an approximate reconstruction of the language. Scientific reconstruction of Tupi suggests that Anchieta either simplified or overlooked the phonetics of the actual language when he was devising his grammar and his dictionary. The writing system employed by Anchieta is still the basis for most modern scholars. It is easily typed with regular Portuguese or French typewriters and computer keyboards, but not with character sets such as his ominous 8859-1, which cannot produce letter 1 EBD, I tilde, U tilde, Y circumflex, and letter 1 EF9. Its key features are the tilde indicating nasalization, a right arrow A tilde. The circumflex accent indicating a semivowel, I right arrow I circumflex. The acute accent indicating the stressed syllable, a ba. The use of the letter X for the voiceless palatal fricative, a spelling convention common in the languages of the Iberian Peninsula but unusual elsewhere. The use of the digraphic for Y circumflex gu for SS to make intervocalic southern voiced, and of J to represent the semivowel. Hyphens are not used to separate the components of compounds except in the dictionary or for didactical purposes. Morphology. Most Tupi words are roots with one or two syllables, usually with double or triple meanings that are explored extensively for metaphorical purposes. A equal round slash hit slash seed car equal forest slash bush slash plant or B equal green slash blue, considered a single color in many languages. Y equal water slash liquid slash spring slash lake, puddle slash river, brook. The most common words tend to be monosyllables. A equal head slash round, a tilde equal shadow slash ghost, po equal hansa equal mother slash source, u equal fruit, y equal water, river. The syllabic words belong to two major groups, depending on which syllable is stressed. If the stress falls in the penult, the last syllable ends with an unstressed vowel, traditionally written with the letter R. Such words usually drop the last vowel, or sometimes even the entire last syllable, to form compounds, or drop the vowel and undergo a consonant mutation nasalization. Anga speech plus Gatu good equal Nheengatu the good language. If the stress falls on the last syllable, the syllable is unchanged. Ita rock stone plus una black equal itana. Polysyllabic non-compound words are less common, but are still frequent, and follow the same scheme. Perna the sea plus miri little equal perna miri salty lagoon pandova pond tree plus uasu big equal pindabusu. Nasal mutation of the initial consonant is always present, regardless of stress. Polysyllabic words are never stressed on the first syllable. Compound nouns are formed in three ways: simple agglutination. Arsi equal aura plus a day plus mother equal mother of day, the sun. Yara equal y plus yara water plus lord slash lady equal lady of the lake, a mythological figure. Blending with either a apocope or a physis. Pindorama equal Pandoba plus Rama Pantri plus future aspect equal where there will be palm trees. This was the name by which some of the coast tribes called the homeland. Takurusu equal Takurava plus Uasu bamboo plus big equal big bamboo tree. Portuguese Takurusu, a variant of bamboo. Complex blending with both apocope and a physis. Taubaté equal Tauba plus Ibate village plus Hai equal the name of a Brazilian town, Taubaté, which was originally the name of a village on the top of a mountain. Itacoixitiba equal Takuara plus Kasei plus Taiba bamboo plus knife plus collective mark. When knives are made out of bamboo wood, the name of a Brazilian town, Itacoaquisituba. Later, after colonization, the process was used to name things that the Indians originally did not have. Ian plus R plus Lord equal a title held by Christ in Catholic worship. Tupi plus a God plus Mother equal the Mother of God Mary. Some writers have even extended it further, creating Tupi neologisms for the modern life in the same vein as New Latin. Mario de Andrade, for instance, coined Sagum Osusari plus Uasu for elevator from Saguum, the name of a small tree climbing monkey. Grammatical structure. Tupi was an agglutinative language with moderate degree of fusional features, nasal mutation of stop consonants and compounding, the use of some prefixes and suffixes, although Tupi is not a polysynthetic language. Tupi parts of speech did not follow the same conventions of Indo-European languages. Verbs are conjugated for person by means of preposition in subject or object pronouns, but not for tense or mood. The very notion of mood is absent. All verbs are in the present tense. Nouns are declined for tense by means of suffixing the aspect mark and nominal tam, but not for gender or number. There's a distinction of nouns in two classes, higher for things related to human beings or spirits, and lower for things related to animals or inanimate beings. The usual manifestation of the distinction was the use of the prefixes t for high-class nouns and s for low-class ones, so that tsa meant human eye, and tsa meant the eye of an animal. Some authors argue that it is a type of gender inflection. Adjectives cannot be used in the place of nouns, neither as the subject nor as the object nucleus. In fact, they cannot be used alone. Tupi had a split and transitive grammatical alignment. Verbs were preceded by pronouns, which could be subject or object forms. Subject pronouns like I expressed the person was in control, while object pronouns like see me signified the person was not. The two types could be used alone or combined in transitive clauses, and they then function like subject and object in English. If a bay equal I flied, I can fly, I flew. See paisaki equal me catch, someone has caught me or I am caught. I circumflex paisa equal I him catch, I have caught him. Although Tupi verbs were not inflected, a number of pronominal variations existed to form a rather complex set of aspects regarding who did what to whom. That, together with the temporal inflection of the noun and the presence of tense markers like korte, made up a fully functional verbal system. Wood order played a key role in the formation of meaning. Taba ba im village plus man plus tiny equal tiny man from the village. Taba im a ba equal man from the small village. Tupi had no means to inflect words for gender, so used adjectives instead. Some of these were piaba equal man, male kua equal woman, female kanini equal boy, young male kua tai equal girl, young female mina equal male animal kua equal female animal. The notion of gender was expressed, once again, together with the notion of age and that of humanity or animality. The notion of plural was also expressed by adjectives or numerals, ba equal man, ba ta equal many men. Unlike Indo-European languages, nouns were not implicitly masculine except for those provided with natural gender, a ba man and kua woman/girl, for instance. Without proper verbal inflection, all Tupi sentences were in the present or in the past. When needed, tense is indicated by adverbs like ko ora at this day. Adjectives and nouns, however, had temporal inflection. Abara, he who was once a man, abarama, he who shall be a man someday. That was often used as a semantic derivation process. Kanga head a kangaroo skull of a skeleton, a ba man, abarama teenager. With respect to syntax, Tupi was mostly SOV, but word order tended to be free, as the presence of pronouns made it easy to tell the subject from the object. Nevertheless, native Tupi sentences tended to be quite short, as the Indians were not used to complex rhetorical or literary uses. Most of the available data about Old Tupi are based on the Tupinambá dialect, spoken in what is now the Brazilian state of São Paulo, but there were other dialects as well. According to Edward Sapir's categories, Old Tupi could be characterized as follows. 1. With respect to the concepts expressed, complex, of pure relation, that is, it expresses material and relational content by means of affixes and word order, respectively. 2. With respect to the manner in which such concepts are expressed. Effusional agglutinative. V symbolic or of internal inflection using reduplication of syllables, functionally differentiated. 3. With respect to the degree of cohesion of the semantic elements of the sentence, synthetic. Colors. Yuba equal yellow, gold and sobi equal blue, green parang equal red, ting equal white, sun equal black. Substances. Tata equal fire, ta equal rock, stone, metal, y equal water, river b equal earth, grande bitu equal air, wind. People. Ba equal man as opposed to woman, Indian or Native American as opposed to European, human being as opposed to the animal world. Yubit equal Frenchman, literally yellow heads, mare equal Frenchman, the name of a mythological figure that the Indians associated with the Frenchman. Caraiba equal foreigner, white man literally means spirit of a dead person. Means also prophet. Kana equal woman, kan hata equal girl, kan amiku equal young woman, kanumi equal boy, kanumego os equal young man, more big sabut equal chief, Piro equal Portuguese neologism, from Piro, old variant of Pedro equal Peter, a very common Portuguese name. Se equal mother, tapia equal slave, also the term for non-Tupi speaking Indians. The body. A candid equal head, iru equal mouth, iput equal nambai equal airport equal hand pai equal foot pai equal ha tesol equal eye tetmet equal leg tai equal nose to bot equal face. Animals. Iru equal parrot, lorry, kadrora equal mako, parrot agora equal jaguar, capybara equal capybara, emba equal snake, cobra para equal fish, saw equal game animal, tapira equal tapper. Plants. Capi equal grass, ivy from which the word capybara comes, ka equal plant, wood. Forest, kuri equal pine, sob equal leaf, iba equal fruit, aba equal plant, ibira equal tree, piece of wood, ibatira equal flower. Society. Oak equal house, tapa equal village. Adjectives. Baraba equal brilliant, gleamy, shiny, katu equal goodmiri, cute equal little, pema equal barren, contaminated. Unhealthy, unlucky, parang equal beautiful, pura, ura equal bad. Old. Dead sata equal many, machuasu, user equal big. Sample text. This is the Lord's Prayer in Tupi, according to Anchieta. Notice that two Portuguese words, kingdom and temptation, have been borrowed, as such concepts would be rather difficult to express with pure Tupi words. Presence of Tupi in Brazil. As a basis for the lingua geral spoken throughout the country by white and Indian settlers alike until the early 18th century, and still heard in isolated pockets until the early 20th century, Tupi left a strong mark on the Portuguese language of Brazil, being by far its most distinctive source of modification. Tupi has given the Portuguese language a few thousand words, some of them hybrids or corrupted, for animals, plants, fruit, and cultural entities. Multiple names of locations, including states e.g. Perná, Pará, Paraíba. Some municipalities which have Tupi names: Iguaçu, Uaçu, Great River, Panema, Waipema, Bad, Fishless, Water, Etanhinga, Ata plus A, Devil's Rock, Itakaquisatuba, Takuix, Itiba, from Ata plus Takora plus Kise plus Taibar, where bamboo knives are made, Itaner, Ta plus Una, black rock jaguar una igora plus iq plus una, small black jaguar pakimbu pock plus imbu, valley of the Pocas. Pariba pura plus aba, bad to navigation or bad river paraneba, from perno plus aba. Dangerous sea paranamirum perna plus miri, salty lagoon literally small sea pindorama from pindo, palm tree, and rutama, country. Palm country, this is the name the Tupiniquans gave to the place where they lived, today known as Brazil. Haike para plus kair, fried fish para plus y, fish water umirama uburama, from ubu plus arama, where the cacti will grow. Among the many Tupi loanwords in Portuguese, the following are noteworthy for their widespread use: abacaxi pineapple, literally fruit with thorns, jacare cayman miran small or juvenile, as in escotira miran scout perica, type of small frog, also slang for velvet, literally harpapitica, type of badminton game played with bare hands, literally slap runner, carnivorous fish, also slang for immoral women, literally tooth fish, poker popcorn, literally explosion of skin, pirogue, originally meaning bald. Now, a slang term for penis pororco tidal phenomenon in the Amazon firth, literally confusion siri, crowd sugary, anaconda urubu, the Brazilian vulture urutu, a kind of poisonous snake urusu, the common name for Melipona scutularis. It is interesting, however, that two of the most distinctive Brazilian animals, the jaguar and the tapir, are best known in Portuguese by non-Tupi names, onça and anta, despite being named in English with Tupi loanwords. A significant number of Brazilians have Tupi names as well: Aracai female, Aracê, mother of the day, Bartira, Partira female, Ibutira, Flower female, Yar, lady of the lake, Jacé both, Iasi, the moon, Janina female, Indayuna, a type of blackbird, Uberjara male, Ibrayar, lord of the trees / lands, Uberata male, Ibrata, hardwood. Some names of distinct Indian ancestry have obscure etymology because the Tupinamba, like the Europeans, cherish traditional names which sometimes had become archaic. Some of such names are Mosa, reportedly meaning son of pain, and Moma. Literature. Old Tupi literature was composed mainly of religious and grammatical texts developed by Jesuit missionaries working among the colonial Brazilian people. The greatest poet to express in written Tupi language, and its first grammarian, was José de Anchieta, who wrote over 80 poems and plays compiled the Izirca Portuguesa e Tupi. Later Brazilian authors, writing in Portuguese, employed Tupi in the speech of some of their characters. Recurrence. Tupi is also remembered as distinctive trait of nationalism in Brazil. In the 1930s, Brazilian integralism used it as the source of most of its catchphrases, like Anaway, meaning you are my brother, the old Tupi salutation, which was adopted as the Brazilian version of the German Sieg Heil, or the Roman Ave in terminology.